Hi, welcome to the Edison Lecture Series 2021. I'm Julien. I'm a professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm really excited to be able to bring you this Edison Lecture Series 2021, albeit virtually. This year, the topic of the Edison Lecture Series is failing well, and with that, I'd also like my colleague Sanjay Shakkottai to introduce himself.
Thank you, Christine. I'm Dr. Sanjay Shakkottai, and I'm a professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department, and I'm really glad to co-host this with Dr. Julien. The Edison Lectures is named after the famous American inventor, Thomas Edison. As you know, he's invented several very important things, the light bulb, motion pictures, power generation, and so on. But there's a very famous quote of his, which is very appropriate for the failing well. He said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And with that, let's go on a series of sections which will talk about failures, quote unquote, apparent failures, but which actually turn out to be important successes. First segment is going to be by Christine, who's going to talk about a really cool failure which you all use every day. With that, I'll hand off to Christine. Take it away.
The first story we're going to talk about today comes from 3M, the chemical company. And in 1968, a scientist at 3M named Spencer Silver was tasked with designing super strong adhesives to be used in aircraft construction. Now, obviously, adhesives that are used to put aircraft together need to be really, really strong. And the technology that Spencer Silver was looking at 3M at the time is something called acrylate copolymer microspheres. Basically, these are weak pressure sensor adhesives. Now, he was looking for a strong adhesive, but the idea was to use these little spheres and they would adhere to the surfaces. And so here's a picture of them with an electron microscope. And the problem that arose here, though, was that while Spencer Silver was trying to come up with a very super strong adhesive, he came up with this weak adhesive instead. But these individual spheres, interestingly, one of the things he discovered, are very, very strong individually. Even though the adhesive itself is weak, the spheres are really strong, which means even when you push on them, apply pressure, they don't break, right? They just bounce back and become spheres again. So Spencer Silver discovered basically that what happens is this results in an adhesive that is effectively sticking tangent to the surface of whatever you're trying to stick it to. And what happens when you do that is it results in an adhesive that can be peeled away pretty easily, which is not so great for aircraft construction, but it leaves no residue behind after you peel it away. And then you can reuse the adhesive over time because the little spheres themselves didn't break down. Now, of course, from Spencer Silver's perspective, this was a little bit of a failure because it was not what his boss asked him to do. His boss asked him to create an adhesive that would hold aircraft parts together. And if you're flying, at 10,000s of feet in the air, you would not like your aircraft carrier adhesive to be peeled away easily, leaving no residue. Doesn't really matter to you when you're that high up in the air, right? So basically, this was a failure. This got shelved inside of 3M. And then a few years later, in 1974, Spencer Silver's colleague named Art Fry was just kind of having a hallway conversation and saying, man, I'm using my hymnal at church, and it would be really nice if I had a way to mark pages in my hymnal. And just through a conversation, it came up that this residue that Spencer Silver had accidentally discovered might actually be a perfect solution for Art Fry. And apparently this part of the story is true. The two were just kind of goofing off and they were like, hey, we should try to put that on some paper. And they walked down to the hall in another colleague's office, and the only paper that was available was this kind of light yellow scraps of paper. So they slapped some adhesive on the back of this. Sure enough, that would allow that paper to stick to Art's hymnals while he was trying to mark the pages for the different hymns in his book. And he started using it in his kind of day-to-day church hymnal. Now, of course, the two of them, So of course, the two of them thought, well, this is cool. Maybe other people will find it useful. So they went to the management at 3M and said, we should sell this. And they agreed. And so a few years later, they managed to manufacture what they called press and peel notes. Again, you put the adhesive on the back of a piece of paper, you stick it on something else, you press it down and it sticks, but you can peel it away and it leaves no residue behind. And then you can reuse that note somewhere else. So they released them. And nobody cares. No one buys them. It's a complete and colossal failure. and 3M pulls them off the shelf. Then 2 years later, for some reason, someone in 3M needed to try to revive this idea. And so they rebranded it as Post. They thought for sure people are going to find this useful. So they rebranded them as something called Post-it notes, and they gave them away for free to a bunch of different offices in Boise, Idaho. And once they were given away for free, these offices started using them everywhere. And 90% of the offices that were given these Post-it notes for free demanded to be able to reorder them. And so just a few years later, or 1 year later in 1980, Post-it notes, basically as you know them today, were released nationally. And now they're obviously available internationally. So that is an example of what was, for Spencer Silver, a clear failure. He did not complete the task he was assigned to do, turned into what we would all agree was a raging success, right? So that's our setup for today. We're going to take a look at some of these sorts of engineering failures. We're going to look at, in some cases, the technology or the engineering or the science behind those failures. And then we're going to look at how they were, in many cases, turned into grand successes. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do as we're talking about this is I'm going to jump into another example that's very similar to Spencer Silver's story, but instead of being in the domain of chemistry, it's actually in the domain of electrical engineering, which is where Sanjay and I spend most of our time. And so this is a man, his name is Wilson Greatbatch. And Wilson Greatbatch was an electrical engineer. And he was spending his days looking for trying to build effectively the precursor to the current modern electronic stethoscope. So a device that could be actually implanted that would allow one to listen to the sound of a heartbeat. And as a key electrical component of this device is something called a blocking oscillator circuit. And this is a not quite complete circuit diagram of the circuit that Wilson Greatbatch was trying to build, right? And so you'll see, some resistors, you see a speaker and so on, but there's one hole in this circuit. He hadn't placed anything to kind of close the circuit to connect those last two endpoints. And so what goes here, he'd already sketched out the circuit, he'd already done a circuit analysis, he knew exactly what should go here. A very specific resistor with a very specific amount of resistance. And so I have in my head, I imagine Wilson Greatbatch is in his office, and his office may look very much like my office, and he probably has a bucket somewhere in his office that's just completely full of a bunch of different resistors. And all of these resistors have different properties. And so Wilson's got to reach in there and he's got to grab one. He's got to figure out which one to grab. He's got to grab the right one and he's got to place it here. And in particular, Wilson Greatbatch was looking for a resistor that had about 10,000 ohms of resistance, right? So he's got to find that right resistor. And he's an expert electrical engineer. He knows exactly which one he's looking for, right? But before we kind of talk about which resistor Wilson Greatbatch is looking for and which one he actually turns out with, we need to think a little bit about what do all of those colors on the resistors mean? So if I go back really quick, if you look at this picture, you see those resistors have kind of different rainbow colors on them. And that's not just for decoration. Each one of those means something to an electrical engineer, right? And so in particular, let's look at the 4-band resistor. There are also 5- and 6-band resistors, but for this example, 4 is sufficient. And you'll see in this cartoon, you'll see them labeled band A, B, C, and D. Now the first 2 bands are basically coding for the digits of the amount of resistance that the resistor is going to have. The 3rd band is a multiplier, right? So if this multiplier is 1,000, I'm going to get my digits multiplied by 1,000 ohms. Whereas if this multiplier is, say, 1,000,000, I'm going to get my digits multiplied by 1,000,000 ohms. And the last band is not super important to this conversation, but it's kind of a tolerance. It's basically a measure of the quality of this resistor. So higher quality resistors are more specific to supplying exactly the amount of resistance that they code for. So there's something that electrical engineering students learn pretty early on in their career, and that's this color code system, right? So this color code system, each one of these colors is used in these bands to indicate the digit, the number that's going to go there. So in our example here, we have a brown first band, which means we get the first digit is a 1. We have a black second band, which means the second second digit is a 0, and we have an orange third band, which means our multiplier is 10 to the 3. Right? So we can take our resistor, we can look at our chart, and we can now figure out how many ohms of resistance this resistor should supply. So in this particular case, what we get is 10 times 10 to the 3, or 10,000 ohms, right? Sorry, that's here. 10,000 ohms. All right, so let's go back to our story about Wilson-Greatbatch. So we still have our color code here so that we can kind of follow along with what's happening. He reaches in and he says, I need a 10,000 ohm resistor. So he reaches in to grab the resistor, and he's reaching for this one, exactly the one I showed you before, brown, black, orange, and then some level of tolerance. But what he comes back with is this one instead. And you can't see it because my head's in the way. But if you look at this, you're getting a 1 and a 0. So the brown and the black are the same, but it has a blue stripe here as a multiplier instead of the orange stripe. So he's getting 10 times 10 to the 6th, or 10 million ohms instead of his 10,000 ohms. And in fact, we've shared within the resources for the lecture, we've shared another video of Wilson-Greatbatch actually talking about what happened when he did this. He plopped that resistor in, and it was completely incorrect. But what happened was he heard a boop, and then a little bit later he heard another boop, boop. And it occurred to him that what this sounded like was in fact a heartbeat. So instead of creating a microphone to listen to a heartbeat, he had created a circuit that would replicate a heartbeat. So what was for him at that time seemingly a complete failure, because he made something that was basically, malfunctioning as a circuit. But if what I've cut out of this picture is what Wilson-Greatbatch had actually accidentally created just then, was the world's first implantable pacemaker, right? So this is a picture of him holding the circuit that he actually built with the incorrect resistor in it. And again, he took that clear failure and turned it into an amazing success. And now he is known as the inventor of the first implantable pacemaker. And so you'll see that picture, that black and white picture with Wilson-Greatbatch there, so he has the first implantable pacemaker. And so this is, again, a story of how we take everyday failures, because we're all failing all the time, and turn them into successes that actually, in many cases, really, in fact, change the world. So what we're going to do now is take a little bit of a break. You can take this story and talk about that with your classmates. And we'll move into the second part of the video. So we will see you at the top of part 2.
Thank you, Christine. That was super cool and inspiring. We'll see you soon. Thanks.